water filtration. It's kind of important when you are heading out into the wilderness for a few days. But two of the most popular tend to be Lifestraw and Sawyer. So I have both and thought it was high time to put them to the test, just to see how they compare across all sorts of metrics and which one is easier to use. So I got them both here. I've got some water to filter, clean glass. We're gonna do things like time how long it takes both of these filters to filter the same amount of water. I'm gonna talk about what all they filter out and how much, hence the laptop, because I can't memorize all those nines. And what each of these brands is doing from a responsibility and sustainability standpoint. Actually, you know what? Let's start with that because this is actually really interesting. I went on a backpacking trip with some folks from Sawyer recently and learned all about the sorts of things that they're doing. And it's pretty impressive. In fact, Sawyer gives away 90% of their profits to nonprofits. Most, if not all of which have to do with supplying water to communities in need of clean, safe drinking water. They do so by partnering with tons of organizations, which is really cool. I even got to meet one of them, which is where I learned that not only are they supplying filters to these communities, but they offer repeated hands-on instruction to ensure those people understand how to use it and are using it correctly so that they stay safe and healthy, which is a really important aspect of a lot of programs like this. Anyway, that's Sawyer. Really cool company. Also, they took me backpacking, so what's not to love? Then we have Lifestraw, which is also a highly sustainable company that cares about people. Now, they're a B Corp certified brand. They're also climate neutral certified. And this little guy here, which is the Lifestraw Peak Series Solo, is actually made of 50% recycled plastics. As far as givebacks go, you know, I'm just gonna read it because there's too much. For every 500 products that we sell, we distribute a Lifestraw community purifier to a school in need, which provides safe water to 100 school children for a period of 5 years. Put another way, one purchase of any Lifestraw product provides a year of safe water to a child in need, which is pretty cool. So both of these brands are doing givebacks that provide clean water to people who need it. But let's talk about other metrics here, starting with price, because that's going to be a big factor for most. Fortunately, they're very similarly priced. The Sawyer costs $40, the Lifestraw Peak Series Solo is $30. $10. Not a big deal. Although if you're wondering if that $10 is worth it, stick around because I've got some news about longevity for you. They're obviously fairly similar in size, though the Sawyer's a little chunkier and just a smidge heavier. It weighs 2 ounces and the Lifestraw Peak Series Solo only weighs 1.7 ounces. But let's talk about the actual filter itself and micron size. Now, both of these are hollow fiber filters, which means there's tons and tons of tiny little straws in there that act as the filters. The water goes through these little straws, and that's how they remove impurities. The Lifestraw has a 0.2 micron filter. The Sawyer has a 0.1 micron absolute pore size, which is smaller than the 0.2. And absolute means that no fiber is larger than 0.1. We'll see how big of a difference that makes in a minute when we talk about numbers and flow rate. They both remove essentially the same things, which is bacteria, protozoa, parasites, microplastics, and dirt like silt and sand. We'll put the numbers up on the screen because I can say how many 0.9s of any given thing that these filter out, but it's hard to hear. So the Sawyer removes 99.99999% of bacteria. The Lifestraw filters out 99.999999% of bacteria. That's one extra 9 in case you were counting. Protozoa and parasites, the Sawyer takes out 99.9999, whereas the Lifestraw takes out 99.999, so slightly less than the Sawyer. The Sawyer says it removes 100% of microplastics and things like dirt and debris, whereas the Lifestraw says it only takes out 99.999. So pretty close. Once you get that far down the line of 0.9s, it's not going to make that much of a difference. But like I said, Sawyer filters out slightly more protozoa and parasites. Lifestraw filters out slightly more bacteria. And I do mean very, very slightly. Now, I mentioned filter longevity a minute ago. Let's talk about that. The Lifestraw says that it lasts up to 2,000 liters. So you can filter 2,000 liters with this thing, at which point it's just gonna stop working. If you're constantly filtering water with a lot of sediment or debris in it and you're not back flushing as often, that might be shortened, but 2,000 liters is the benchmark. As for the Sawyer, this thing has a 10-year lifespan. And honestly, that's being conservative. Sawyer says they have filters in the field that are still working well after the 10-year mark. So that $10 difference isn't looking too shabby at this point, is it? Now, there are things that can shorten the life of a filter, like if either of these freezes after you've used it to filter water, you're gonna need a new one. Sorry, freezing damages the hollow fibers and makes them basically ineffective. But frankly, 10 years for one filter? Yeah, that's impressive. You don't need to buy another filter every couple of years. Just take care of this one, which we'll talk about in a minute. Mostly back flushing and why it's so important and how you have to do it with each of these. But let's get into actually testing the flow rate here. Let's start with the Lifestraw. Now, to use this, you're gonna twist off the bottom because that's where you're gonna put it onto the water bottle. And then after you do, pop off the top and that's where it's at. You can either squeeze it directly into your mouth and drink from it sort of like a squeezable squeeze bottle straw, or you can squeeze it into another clean vessel. I have my Canuck collapsible water bottle here, which I love, so I'm just gonna screw that on. And both of these do work with any normal size threading. So pretty much any water bottle you can buy at the grocery store, these are gonna fit on that. So I'm gonna take this, and Josh is gonna time me. You ready? I'll tell you when to go as soon as it starts flowing. Ready? Okay. And go. You like my glass? Has a dinosaur on it. And stop. What do we got? 18.56 seconds. I guess it didn't matter how full I filled the bottle because I ran out of room in my glass. All right, let's try with the Sawyer now. So this one, no cap or anything. I guess that is a downside. If you want to take it off of the bottle, there's nothing to keep it from really like leaking on anything. But honestly, most people just leave their filter on their bottle all the time, except for when they're filling the bottle. So not really a downside in my opinion. This one you could also squirt directly into your mouth. It has this nice cap covering the mouthpiece, or into a vessel of your choice. Are you ready, Josh?
Ready.
Okay. Ready and start. Whee! Squeezing with very similar pressure. And stop. What do we have?
20.31.
Ooh, 20.31. Remind us what the other one was? 18?
18.56.
18.56. Okay, let's talk about back flushing, a necessary operation for pretty much any filter worth its salt. You need to back flush because sediment and debris and particles and all kinds of things can get stuck in those tiny little hollow fiber filters, and they need to be pushed out, usually from the opposite direction of the way that water is usually flowing. You back flush from the mouthpiece out through the base. Now, how often you need to do that really depends on how you're using your filter. You should do it more often, like up to once a day. If you're filtering a lot of water with a lot of sediment in it, which you can reduce by pre-filtering through something like a bandana, but you at least need to do it after every backpacking trip. So you go out for a couple of days or a weekend, a week, when you come back flush that baby before you store it. It'll also help your filter last longer. So for the Lifestraw, you have to have this special plunger. Use it by screwing off the top of the Lifestraw and the bottom. And then you fill this with clean water. We're gonna fill up our syringe, grab our other cup, screw this on what used to be the mouthpiece. There we go. Make sure it's nice and snug, and then press. And this isn't very dirty, so that's happening very quickly, very easily. You want to do that until the water coming out of it runs clean. So right now, that's immediately because I've cleaned it recently. But once the water runs clean, do it maybe one more time, and then you're done. Your filter is back flushed, and you can put the caps back on. Now, the Sawyer, on the other hand, I really like the back flush system. You can use their special back flush tool, or each model comes with one of these, which looks like maybe just a funny little cap. But you remove the lid of that, put that right on the top like so, and then take a water bottle, same size as, usually goes on, and screw that right onto a clean water bottle, which is super cool, which means when you're traveling or you're in the backcountry, you don't have to bring a full extra piece of equipment. You can just bring this tiny little blue thing. And then you just squeeze. Ta-da! Easy peasy. When you're done, just take it right back off. Put it all back together again. Honestly, these are very similar pieces of equipment. Now, if I'm gonna choose one for my backpacking trips, honestly, probably gonna be the Sawyer. Yeah, it's a little bit heavier than the Lifestraw, but I appreciate that I don't have to bring a whole other piece of equipment that's frankly kind of bulky when I'm trying to pack a bag as small as, 35 to 40 liters. It's quick, it's easy to use, and I love the fact that it's going to last me 10 years as long as I take care of it. That's a big deal because if one of these is going to the landfill every 2,000 liters, we're saving a lot of stuff from heading to the dump. To be fair, you can replace just the filter in this. You can keep the outer casing and just replace what's inside. But still, having a filter that lasts as long as the Sawyer does is way more sustainable in the long run. So that's what I'm gonna go with. Also, there's really no compromise here on performance. So what's not to love? Also, 90% of profits? Honestly, Sawyer. Get after it. Why are you being all hush-hush about this? So get outside, drink filtered water so you don't get E. coli, and wander on. I'm told E. coli sucks is all I'm saying. You don't want it. You don't want that. Filter your dang water.